If you're an agent who knows you're capable of more, but just needs the right environment to unlock it, listen up. I'm not just the host of this podcast, I'm also the team leader at Keller Williams Portfolio Realty in Midtown Toronto. Our agents consistently outperform the market in listings taken and sold. They have access to world-class training, and they get daily support and coaching from me and my entire leadership team. But what do they love the most? It's our culture. We believe in collaboration over competition. We believe that agents who work together should know each other. And most of all, we believe that a rising tide lifts all ships. So if you've ever thought, I wish I had stronger mentorship or a team that truly gets it, maybe it's time we had a conversation. If you're interested in a free, confidential 30-minute strategy call with me, send me a DM on Instagram. Now let's get to the episode. I've known you for a few years now, and one of the business philosophies that we spoke about pretty early on in our relationship was rhythm beats hustle. What does that mean to you? What is rhythm? What is hustle? And how does it become a business philosophy?
Well, a lot of people, if you look around the world right now, and this is continually is growing, is a lot of people get in this hustle culture, right? And we get into this mode of grind. And supposedly that's supposed to equal a whole lot of success at the end of that stick, right? And what I've learned is that yes, there can be success at the end of that, but there doesn't equal a whole lot of fulfillment at the end of that. And probably you're going to burn a lot of people, a lot of bridges along the way if you're just focused on that hustle, that's grinding, that get stuff done for the sake of getting stuff done, versus finding yourself. And I've learned this through, I played a lot of sports growing up. I learned this through golf primarily. Golf is a sport about rhythm, not going out there and hustling through the round and trying to get the lowest score possible. But you actually find when you swing a golf club, most people, average players, are a little bit out of control in their swinging. And what you would find if you went to a golf coach or instructor, they would probably teach you to be in a little bit more rhythmic flow when you're swinging a club. And in most cases, that actually makes the ball go farther. So similarly in life, in business, when you're finding that flow state where you're not only just hustling through your day, but you're actually doing it with a purpose, and you're doing it with a sense of, a mission behind it. You're being patient when the situation calls for it. You can actually produce a much higher outcome. But not only that, you can produce a much higher fulfillment and enjoyment out of the day.
Would you agree that hard work beats talent? And if so, how do you reconcile these two seemingly contradictory philosophies?
I believe hard work can beat talent. I also believe talent can beat hard work. It really depends. Those aren't necessarily black and white statements, I would suggest. Hard work for sure can beat talent. And we've seen many cases like this where someone who, puts in extra hours is going to get in their reps. They're going to learn hopefully faster, and they're going to learn through those errors and produce a better output than someone who's just relying on talent alone. That said, talent can bring you a long ways. And if you know what your talent is, where your talents lie, and you lean into those, you can produce a heck of a lot more than if you're just hustling and working hard and you're not working hard in the areas where you're already pretty good at. So I think that's a great thing for people to make a distinction on in terms of where they actually fit in life and where their talents lie. Because John Maxwell talks a lot about this, where you can always bring yourself up a few levels on the chart, from a scale of 1 to 10. If you're a 5 in something, you can probably work yourself up to about a 7. You can probably go a couple rings up the ladder, but it's very hard to go from a 5 to a 10. You're probably not going to be a 10 in whatever area you're assessing yourself in. You're definitely not going to go from a 3 to a 10, right? But you could go from an 8 to a 10, or a 9 to a 10, or even a 7 to a 10. And people that are working in the 9s and 10s of their life and focusing on those areas of their life to add value to the world, that's where the big paydays happen. They don't happen at the 6s and the 7s or the 5s. And they certainly don't happen anywhere below that. So very, very good insight and distinction to make for yourself in terms of where your talents do lie.
Right. So it sounds like the structure is more to find the talent that you have inside of you, and then to structure a rhythm or a system around that talent through hard work so that you can really get the most out of it.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. Big thing in that is self-awareness. Covering where your talents lie, where you're not just okay, but you're actually really good. Everyone's got talent. Right? Everyone's got some sort of talent. Potentially, some people are not talented in sales or in real estate sales, and so that person who's not as naturally talented is going to have to work harder to get the same results as someone who's already pretty gifted. That could be in terms of gifted in terms of influence or gifted in terms of communication. Those are some of the key skills to a high level of sales output. So yes, very important to be self-aware of that, discover where your talents lie, lean into those. And you can also align up the right type of clients with those areas of talent that you have. There's lots of work you can do on that. And the more you assess that and work within that area, you're going to find yourself in a better rhythm, better flow, better enjoyment, because you're going to get results a lot faster, a lot easier.
A great distinction that I read in The One Thing, the book by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, was that people confuse business and busyness. And I see that all the time where people want to be busy all day, because if they're busy all day, then they feel like they're working really, really hard, and there's some inherent value in that, supposedly. And I see that in real estate in general, that hustle has been glorified to such an extent, it doesn't really matter whether or not you're actually moving things forward. There's so much, I guess, superiority that's given to the people that do quote unquote hustle. Why has hustle culture been glorified in real estate, and what are the downsides of that?
Probably because we're focused on success in the world in general right now. A lot of people glorify success. Success is, if you are super successful in life and not fulfilled, that's going to be I believe that's going to be one of the most disappointing things you ever achieve in life. You could be a multimillionaire, multi-billionaire, whatever that success means to you. But if you're not finding fulfillment within that, you're going to find, this is why we find, big celebrities, big people who have had success fall into depressive states and really go down the opposite ways, because they've hit that level of success and realized that alone is not going to make them fulfilled or happy in life. So I believe you can find that fulfillment and happiness along the way to success, which will actually magnify your success when it's all said and done, when you get to that level of success that you're seeking, because it will inevitably multiply. You'll find people on the way that actually want to join you in that journey. And part of fulfillment is helping others. It's serving others at a higher level. And so you're naturally going to be able to expand your version of success beyond what you could even probably dream of if you attack it in that way. So just going about it for the sake of success is where I think a lot of people find themselves. If you're going after success just for the sake of success, you're going to find that it's not exciting at the end of the road. You're going to find probably that you're feeling even worse about that than you were in the first place. So a lot of hustle culture puts you into that mode, puts you into success mode only, which is dangerous. And so I think, there's lots of versions of that, and every person's going to look a little different in that mode. But, you see people posting about their schedules, their daily schedules. You've probably seen some of those posts on social media and whatnot, their 14-hour days or something. I think for the most part, people just pick out their most busy day ever and say, I'm going to post this. This is my one busiest day of my life. So that's probably not their day-to-day life when they're posting that, but it's very dangerous to look at that and go, oh, I better have no white space in my calendar. I better have like every little 15-minute increment dialed in. In my experience, I've had some of my biggest ideas, biggest visions come from having a clear calendar and actually being able to reflect on my thoughts and, really think them through versus just thinking about it and go. And sometimes you need to kind of take things a little more patiently and then attack hard. Not saying don't work hard. It's not even close to what I'm saying, but work hard and be patient at the same time.
You said something in there that I thought was really interesting when you were talking about working for success for the sake of success, where if I looked at that at face value, I would think that somebody who's super hungry for success and then they work hard to get that success, and that's the motivating factor behind everything that they're doing, one might think that that is the recipe for success. You want something, you go and get it. But Josh Tucker, who I had on the show last week, made an important distinction where if you ask yourself questions to clarify and I guess get clarity about where you are and what your priorities are, what you'll find is the thing that you'll do for the most amount of time without being paid is probably where you'll make the most amount of money. And I feel like when agents or when people work hard for this vision of success, whatever that is, whether or not they enjoy the work that comes along with it or that they have to do along the way, they plateau very quickly, as opposed to the agents that just want to speak with people and want to provide value, want to create content, want to add value to the world. Those are the ones that actually see those levels of success because they're able to not only do what fills them with joy and gives them more energy, but as you're saying, they can put systems around this because they enjoy the work that they're doing and they wake up thinking, how do I do more of this? And those are the things that will actually help them make money. And so I want to ask, what are some core rhythms that you would suggest that every agent should build their week around?
So look, and this is something the way I learned that was through my podcast, actually. So I had a podcast for over 10 years, and we started in 2014, and it was my patient activity that I did and worked on in some way, shape, or form every week. Brought me zero money for almost 2 years. The intent of it was not to make money, which is one of the reasons we were successful with it, is we were not itching every month to make some sort of return on it. Now, I started that at the very start of my real estate career, right? So at the same time, I was also making cold calls, connecting with people day to day in other various ways, searching for the quicker payday, because I was very money motivated at the beginning, like most new agents are. Searching for the quicker payday, but also knowing that in the background, I had a long-term game being continuously worked on every day that was building towards something much bigger that was going to attract business on autopilot for me. And over the course of that 18 months, 2 years, when we started generating business from that podcast, it was not even on my radar that we were going to generate that amount of business, but I was just doing it because it was fun. We were connecting. I was learning through the show. We were talking a lot about real estate investing. Eventually, all these investors started reaching out and saying, hey, you must know a lot because you've been interviewing people and talking to them for 2 years. I want to come buy properties in Hamilton. How can you help me? Sure. Well, that started happening more and more. That started happening every single week, every single day almost in its peak. And we generated a ton of business through that. Not only did we generate realtor business, but we generated all sorts of investment opportunities that we were able to work with. So, that took time, right? That took patience. It didn't take that hustle mentality that I needed to get results right today. Because if I went at it with that mindset, we would have pushed people away. We would have actually, we would have probably had a whole bunch of ads in the podcast. It would have been obviously pushing out that we want to make money. And it wouldn't have gone over very well. So I was probably doing that in some way in my day-to-day activities, because I was trying to build a business and we need money coming in quicker than 2 years. But, we were at the same time building that long-term game. As you said, it kind of something we enjoy doing anyways. And we were doing it for free for a long period of time. We didn't give up because we enjoyed it anyways. And eventually that had a big windfall of opportunities and eventually money-making opportunities through that. So that's my example in my business life where I really saw the effect of that. And I think, in order to win in this business, agents have to have some version of that long-term game playing out in their day-to-day. It can't just be, let's make cold calls, let's door knock, let's follow up. Of course, do all those things. But where in your schedule, in your weekly or even daily schedule, are you building that long-term game that's going to build business on autopilot for yourself at some point?
So what are the, core competencies, let's say, that agents should build for themselves?
I mean, look, we can talk about the lead generation practices, the lead follow-up practices, the appointment practices, the scripting and role-playing, negotiating contracts. Those are really the main 5 elements of a realtor's life that are money-making activities. And all the other stuff is generally noisy. But in all that, there is no long-term, aside from, yes, you are building relationships when you're talking to people, you're following up. Of course, you're relationship building, but if you're not doing that with some sort of strategy behind it for long-term game, so adding consistent value somehow in that conversation, you're really not building a purposeful long-term flow of business, right? You're just kind of going at it with that hustle mentality to make money. So I would just assess those 5 pieces are great, but add on a 6th one where you're building something of long-term sustainable value. Could be a content-related activity. It could be, some sort of training course, or it could be a web series that you put together. It could be, a lot of people are going to gravitate towards some sort of content building strategy in that nowadays, which is great. It could be events. It could be, doing something where you're able to do something you enjoy anyways, and you're also able to generate business through it. So it could be going to a certain club or creating your own club that has nothing to do with real estate and inviting people out there that could be real estate sellers at some point in that journey, and just hanging out with them. That could be around a sport, it could be around an art, it could be around an interest totally outside of real estate. And I think a lot of people ought to do more of that and build communities that way versus just more of the transactional piece, which is what a lot of newer agents get stuck in, and they don't build that long-term flow of business. And I think a lot of people end up out of the business because of that, because it's a grind to go through that, just calling, door knocking, transactional type stuff on a day-to-day basis. That's going to wear you out at some point. I don't know too many. I do know a few, but I don't know too many that absolutely love that without a higher purpose to it.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding the distinction that a rhythm is the system you build for yourself to guarantee the long-term success, and the hustle is the 5 activities that you mentioned. I think it was negotiating a contract, prospecting and lead gen, follow-up, and what were the other ones again?
Scripting and role playing.
Okay. So
Is that 5?
is the rhythm the long-term success that comes outside of those 5 activities?
The rhythm's going to look different for every person, right? That's why it's a little hard to identify it on a generic stage. But the hustle stuff is going to be the things that probably most people are going to get glorified for, right? It's going to be all the stats, all the data, that's the tough part with it. Rhythm is more like a flow thing. It's more of it's hard to put a metric on it. And that's why people have a hard time pouring into that side of their life. It's because it's not easily identifiable with a metric, right? Success, achievements often comes down to numbers, right? Certain amount of money, certain amount of deals, certain amount of GCI, a certain amount of profit. All good things to track and to have some attention on. It's just doing that without some sort of other purpose or other rhythm behind it, or doing it in a way that you enjoy. It just leads to burnout or some sort of unfulfilling success, which is the worst kind of success. So if you add into it it could look like a certain cadence in your day-to-day life in terms of your scheduling, where you're adding on there something that's more enjoyable, in terms of, and still generates business perhaps, but you can do it, like you said, do it without ever needing to get paid for it, but you're going to do it anyways. Those sort of things are going to help you with your fulfillment side. But I think what most people need to do is dig down deep in their hearts and their mind and their soul, and see where they really could serve the world for the long term, and where that might not be for the next 20 years, but that could be for the next couple of years. And it's at least going to take a couple of years, because those sort of, in a business sense, those sort of focuses don't necessarily pay off right away. They generally pay off over the course of 2 to 3 years, right? So you have to have patience with it, which is why people struggle with it, is because it doesn't show immediate return. And yet the best things in life, I learned this a lot through investing in real estate, right? The best pieces of real estate to invest in are not flip properties. And there's a reason everyone loves the flip properties, because they make quick money, right? And they're shiny and sexy, and they look good on TV. The people that I know that made the most money in real estate have bought real estate and waited and waited and waited and waited. And over the course of 5-10 years, then you look back and you go, wow, that piece of real estate is really worth a lot of money. It's doubled in price. Buying a $500,000 piece of real estate and waiting for it to double over 10 years and having 500 grand is generally going to be a bigger win for people versus just flipping it quick and making a quick, 40, 50K, right? But people like the 40, 50K win because it's fast and it's exciting. That's fine to do those, but the bigger wins are always in the more patient, long-term game.
Wouldn't you say though that if this is how you're translating rhythm versus hustle, they don't really talk to each other? Like, you need rhythm for your long-term success and fulfillment and happiness, yes, but you need hustle to get to the point where you can even possibly give rhythm a thought. And I would say, even sticking with the investing example, I need an income to get me to a position where I can purchase a property that I can hold to make long-term wealth and long-term success. But without my salary, that's not going to happen. So tell me where I'm wrong or if I'm wrong, but if a new agent, for example, coming into the industry starts talking to me about rhythm, I would say don't even think about that for the next 6 months to a year. Like, let's get the hustle down based on how we're describing it now. I would say get the hustle down, figure out what that looks like for you. And then once you start to see some success and you have an income and maybe even some disposable income, now let's talk about rhythm. What do you think about that?
Well, what happens with those people is they end up, where do they end up spending that money? Is they end up spending it on successful type things, and they end up not having the money to go buy the income property, if you're using that example. In most cases, I see that. They end up reinvesting it into success-driven items or services or resources. Again, fine, you can do that, and you're going to potentially be successful with it, but it's not going to be as sustainable, and it's not going to build something that you're happy about in your day-to-day life, most likely. So I would say it doesn't need to all be in business sense. So that person that you're describing as a new agent who's coming in and going to hustle their way to success, that's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but they better be finding some sort of rhythm or flow or enjoyment in other areas of their life if they're going to be pouring into the real estate world in just that hustle mentality, right? Hustle's fine. I'm not saying don't hustle. Just saying find that rhythm in your life that makes you fulfilled and happy along the way, because someone who's showing up for the next year and hustling through their real estate business, if they don't have some sort of rhythm or flow in their life outside of real estate, they're going to show up some days and be pretty miserable. And when you're pretty miserable and you're going and knocking on doors or calling on, what are the odds that that misery is going to come across as an attractor for someone to work with that person, right? That you're going to end up deterring clients from working with you. Whereas if you're finding joy in life, finding that rhythm in other areas, or it could be in your business, you're generally going to be a happier person, and you're generally going to attract more business, right? And so it might take less hustle if you're coming at it from a more patient point of view and working on yourself probably more so than the average person, so that you're happy and excited to be there day to day.
I got you.
Therefore, it might only take 10 calls rather than 100, because those 10 calls are going to be much more connective, and you're going to, that enjoyment, that energy comes across in those conversations.
I understand that
Does that make sense?
distinction. I think that finding rhythm in your day-to-day and long-term fulfillment might mean going to the gym or prioritizing a date night or something like that. That does make sense. And if we're looking at it like that, then as a new agent, I would tend to agree with you that the rhythm is more the why behind the work as opposed to the work itself, where and I still do think that they don't necessarily speak to each other unless you become so consumed with the hustle that the why or that the rhythm then takes a backseat. And I think maybe that's the cautionary tale that you're here to provide for us.
Most successful agents that I've seen have had that experience where they've optimized too much for the hustle and the success. And that's where you get that kind of midlife crisis of some sort, or mid-business life crisis, where you eventually realize, oh, I've really been working my ass off, and I'm not that happy with this, even though I've got a good business or I've got a decent team. And then you see them and they break it all down and they restart, or they just have a much different vision for their next phase of their business. It's because they've optimized too much for success in most cases. The ones that have actually had success, they optimize too much on that side, and then they have to revamp it all. And so I'm just saying, you could probably find a lot more peace in the journey if you started, and a lot more, you get there a lot faster if you just started with that mentality from the beginning. One of Gary Keller's lines that I hear him say all the time is that he says, the faster you become patient in your wealth building, the faster you will build wealth, right? Because the more patient you are in it, the more, if you're not patient with it, and this happens within the day-to-day real estate world too. It's not just wealth building and investing. It's wealth building in your business. It's building that a great business is built with a wealth building mentality in it, that you're building it with patience. You're building systems that are going to scale and be, constantly driving in business, not just one-offs, but they're going to be sustainable. So you have to build that patience to build a sustainable business. That patience is that rhythm I'm talking about, right? You're working hard, yes, but you're also doing it with a patient mentality, where you're not sabotaging yourself or your business by making decisions in a moment that are emotional or heated because you're not in a great state, right? The more you can get in that patient mentality, you can let things go. You can let the challenges go. You can work through the inevitable confrontational things that happen through real estate. There's so many things that are going to come at you that are going to be very challenging to work through, and you gotta be of that patient wealth building mentality to work through those with ease and come out the other side. Otherwise, you're just going to be sabotaging yourself all over the place every day.
So what are some ways that you use rhythm to fuel your life outside of work, like family or gym? What is it?
I mean, family, fitness, those are some good F's to remember. Anytime you can start your day with a good chunk of those, if not all of those. I'm a big fan of a morning routine that encompasses those. And when you pour into that part of your life, you're probably going to show up in your business a lot more at ease, a lot more calm, a lot more excited to work hard, but also with that calm presence. They say people have a presence? A presence is very influential. When someone has a good presence to them, it's usually a very confident, influential thing. And I don't know too many people that show up hustling, grinding, running around, emotional, that have that presence. And so those people with presence are in rhythm. They're in flow of their life. They're calm, they're confident, they're developing much more of that leadership mentality. That's something that really attracts a lot of great people, a lot of great talent, a lot of great clients. So especially people that are team building and building up other people in their business, hiring admin talent, hiring other agents. You need to build that presence, that calming influence.
So speaking of, like, you have a team in Hamilton with about 20 agents. You have a brokerage in Vaughan with about 150 agents. And the ethos in both the brokerage and the team is the rhythm, right? Rhythm beats hustle. How do you scale that?
Great people. So anyone can build up to about $1 million business with a lot of hustle, right? A lot of people have done that. A lot of people can do that. A lot of people can do that depending on your price points, and that you can do that sometimes as a one person show. That next level, to go to a higher level than that, you really need a lot of people around you. You need to have other good leaders. You need to have other good talents that are in your world, building systems, doing things that you're probably not as good at. And they're coming in and they're amplifying those areas where you aren't as talented. And you have to have those people to go to, the 5 million mark or 10 million mark in any business. And so when you build it that way, and you're aware of that too, and you can look for other talented people that can complement you in your areas that you're not as great at, and you can complement the business you've already built with more of that presence, that leadership, you're going to start to see scalability happen naturally, just because now it's not all you, it's others multiplying out. And that's what you need eventually to get to that 10 million mark, or way beyond that. Beyond that, it starts to really become, you're past that mid-management point of that. Now you're having real high-level leaders in the business. But yeah, it scales through people. And in real estate, even more than anything, it scales through people. You need great systems. You need to nowadays use a lot of tech and AI tools to help automate things, but all that falls apart really quick if you have the wrong people.
What's next for you?
Good question. We are building out, speaking of systems and scalability and all that, we are building out some newer systems that we're excited about, in the form of lead generation, actually, that we've been toying around with. We're scaling it through our Found Spaces Realty Group in the coming weeks and months. We're excited about that because we've been working through that, and it has some AI components to it. It's a little bit too early to share exactly how that system works, but we're going to be rolling that out next few weeks, which we think is going to help a lot of our realtors. And then beyond that, we're really looking to grow through we have a whole property management division to our business as well, which is something that we think is pretty scalable, and we're looking to grow that into other markets across the country, and through that also continually build out our real estate side. So we're excited to keep growing. I mean, that's one of the things about building a business through that rhythm approach, is that you end up having a whole bunch of good people around you that are going to inevitably excite you day to day to continually grow. And you don't have to be the only one doing it all the time.
Well, thank you so much for coming on this show, Sandy. Really appreciate all your time and insights that you provided with us today. If you are in the Hamilton or Vaughan area looking for a great brokerage and a great team leader, people that are going to train you and inspire you to be better, definitely look up Sandy Mackay, look up Found Spaces Realty Group, or look up Keller Williams Legacies, like I said, in Vaughan. And once again, Sandy, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, man, for having me. It was fun to share.